we want to move on now and talk about the Ukraine, perhaps. It's important. And I was
yes, I'm with you, and I'm waiting for this moment because I think it's time to talk about what we live in now in Ukraine, and it is big question: will Putin troops who almost surrounded Ukraine will invade us or not? This is the biggest question, and.
Let me just introduce you again, Larissa, because we've been joined by some new people from the World Intellectual Forum. So Larissa is joining us as a philosopher. She's a professional philosopher at the Institute of Philosophy in Ukraine. Ukraine has a whole tradition of great intellectuals, and Larissa has worked on a French philosopher, Levinas, but is an all-round thinker. I first heard her give a talk about Goethe that was, brilliant. So. And I think what we just learned from MAPS, I hope you heard their presentation, is the
yes. I'm just disconnected my video. Yeah.
Military buildup of Russia in the Arctic. I think so. If Ukraine were to sign this MAPS,
yes, I put it.
It would put a lot of pressure on Russia. So anyway, Larissa, the floor is yours. Please tell us how things look like.
I'm attending World Intellectual Forum first time, and I decided to first of all to see ethics of communication. And my first question will be some Russians here, some Russian people here, and I decided not to use word Russia. I have a lot of Russian friends who sympathize Ukraine a lot, and I decided to use words like Putin troops, Putin politics, aggressors, etc. So those things not to connect to this aggression to a certain culture which I respect a lot. The main question which we raise every day and open news and hearing the sound from the street means does it happen or not? I mean, does Putin's army and aggressors start his moving to the territory of Ukraine or not? And actually, we live in such a stage for quite a long time, at least for 2 months. And it creates a certain psychological mode. And some Ukrainian intellectuals who investigate archives, Soviet archives, archives from Soviet Union era, and in particular KGB archives, think, those Ukrainian intellectuals think that this is a certain KGB strategy for rising panic, for disorient people, to make its opponents, or victim, weaker. And this strategy already works. So in this certain sense, the war is already started. For last 2 months, Ukraine lost a huge almost about $12 million of, this is our economical losses. And of course, people quite disoriented. Every day in Facebook, we are reading certain information should be take these small cases in a if it will be sudden attack on the capital or villages or other cities. So should we prepare it or not? Should we take gasoline to our, it's very unecological point, but should we, take our car and go to the west? And what should we do with children? So who will stay, who will go, and etc. So we think that this is strategy of fear and strategy of panic is already work. And this is, if to say about our condition, yes, if to say about prediction, okay, Putin is absolutely unpredictable. So some people think that army will just stay for a few months on the border of Ukraine. They will show a very clear signals that they will start to attack us. But and the panic from the West side and media, BBC, and I mean a lot of media just rising, do such, say his citizens, please leave Ukraine immediately because Putin will start his movement tomorrow, etc. So, it makes Ukraine and her Western pattern just silly and disoriented. This is a strategy. So we hope that it will be nothing. We still hope for that. But honestly, the most clever people is already, prepared to a very unpleasant, condition of war. That's it. If you have any question, anything, I will react and respond just to clarify some of my statements. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Larissa. That's very disturbing. You're talking from the ground up, the psychological pressures and so on. Our Russian board member of the World Intellectual Forum, Professor Chumakov, who's the vice president of the Russian Philosophical Association, was going to speak. But unfortunately, he seems to have come down with COVID. And he's coughing.
It's very unfortunate.
But he has sent me a message, which I'm going to share with you, which he emailed me last night, saying he couldn't speak in person. Firstly, he wanted to thank you, Larissa, for coming and sharing. He will obviously watch this. He'll be able to hear our discussions. I mean, Chumakov very much is aware of the history of Ukrainian intellectual work in Kiev and the Academy of Sciences and so on. And I think what he would like to suggest is a collaboration between Ukrainian philosophers and Russian philosophers to discuss peace specifically. He would like to have a delegation of Ukrainian philosophers come to Moscow to the Institute of Philosophy and then have a serious discussion about what philosophers can do for peace. How can they challenge the kind of scapegoating and the myths that go on about the other, which is something that philosophers, if we don't challenge that, then we might as well just pack up and go home. And also, then I think it would be nice if the Ukrainian Institute of Philosophy invited some Russian philosophers too to Kiev, and it could become like an annual dialogue or something, or this is an emergency. We have to act. And I know that Chumakov has told me that would be, he has the influence in the Russian Institute of Philosophy to make that happen from their end. We hope that you can talk to people in the Ukrainian Institute of Philosophy and make it happen at your end, So it becomes an official diplomacy. Is that possible?
Thank you for telling me. I may say that we have a strong connection with Institute, with Russian Institute of Philosophy. I know that a lot of intellectuals truly support us, and a lot of intellectuals do such a symbolic scene in Facebook, which is much more dangerous for them than for us. I mean, to put Ukrainian flag on their avatars, and regarding Putin's politics, it might be act with consequences, unlike Ukrainians in Ukraine, And actually, I want to support your idea. So we are connected with each other, but we have some restriction for crossing the border, and that is why we could connect online. But personally, it will be in a more calm, situation when. Russian, the Putin troops won't stay on the border of Ukraine. I may say about contribution of intellectual. I may say about a very really fantastic example which made by a group of Semitologists, of Moscow Semitologists. I wanted to tell that these professional Semitologists, people who learn Semitic languages from Moscow, is a leading school in the world. and many of them go to anti-war meetings just after Maidan, I mean after 2014, and many of them was caught into the, it's not a prison, but you know, isolator, and in the isolators they decide to do their contribution to Ukrainian, I mean intellectual contribution. And in 2016 was created a fantastic collaboration between Ukrainian and Russian intellectuals. It was created a school on Semiotology, a summer school on Semiotology, which held 3 years in the Ukrainian city of Ostrog, and gathered world intellectuals. I mean, people come from Israel, from USA, from Poland, from Russia, Moscow and St. Petersburg. And it was a great event. Everything what I know about Aramaic languages and their division, I know from that people who did it voluntarily, freely, because they want to, you know, to do this peace action to, you know, show their solidarity with Ukraine and their, you know, political position against Putin, you know, politics. That's it.
Really
so.
Great. Well, that's good news. Larissa is also a semiotologist, an expert in Jewish philosophy. We've had long discussions about that. I mean, Ukraine is the home of Hasidic Jewish Kabbalistic thought. The Baal Shem Tov came from there. And, you know, anyone that's interested in the Kabbalah in Jewish mysticism, you know, this is a catastrophe. The thought that bombs start going off. Chernobyl was bad enough. We don't want any more fighting. And I know, I mean, I just want to pose a difficult question to chew on, really, because I mean, I've also watched a documentary made by Oliver Stone, a left-wing American documentary worker who's done films about the assassination of Kennedy. He made a great movie about the life of Alexander the Great. He filmed the Maidan demonstrations, and he discovered some very difficult sort of like the pathogens under the ice that we're talking about when the Arctic you know, melts. So Ukrainian nationalism does have an undertow of anti-Semitism, and this man Stefan Bandera, who's one of their heroes, was an absurdly ridiculous anti-Semitic pro-German fascist, you know, and unfortunately you can't wish that away from history. It's a fact. So from a Russian perspective, they look on Ukrainian nationalism not as a sort of sweet, lovely, oh, we all love it, cuddly, let's fly the flag, but something a bit sinister and dark, and, you know, sort of thuggish, right? And so how can we try and redress this? I mean, is it just an image problem, or is it a reality? How can we address both the reality and the image of this?
Dear Thomas, this is propaganda. This is a very cruel and unjust propaganda. Listen, just one thing. If you say about the Euromaidan was very pro-nationalistic, or was also created and supported by a national group, look at me. I'm a participant of Euromaidan. Just look at me. And it was, you know, the majority of people was like me, a simple citizen. And, you know, it was one really very difficult moment in Euromaidan and all these protests, that, you know, people who fighting against police, they already have criminal persecution, and all of us afraid. And it was one moment when people from nationalistic group, it's true, they come and say to us, okay, do everything you want, we protect you, and we take all the guilty on us. If you will be persecuted, you know, we will take all guilt on us. Unfortunately, Oliver Stone forget about fantastic detail about Stepan Bandera, that one of his nearest colleague was Jewish. Unfortunately, Oliver Stone connect a Ukrainian national symbolic to fascist group. unfortunately, it's clear from the first 40 minutes of Oliver Stone, this Ukrainian fire, which is response to a very nice movie, Winter on Fire, about Euromaidan. It was just documentary about these protests in the center, in the capital of Ukraine. So actually, flag, history, territory, they want to present Ukraine as an unwhole country, as a fictional country. It's very clear that he is combined and collect from some historical, turns. But I'm sorry, we are more than 1,000 years. We have a huge history, our origin in Kiev and Rus. So, that's why we exist when Russia is not exist. This is a very, interesting turn. And I want to actually one prominent historian, Timothy Snyder, already responds to this absolutely unjust propaganda and these pieces and about anti-Semitic things. We have second president who is Jewish. The first president who is Jewish was Poroshenko. Our second president, Zelensky, is Jewish. So our current president is Jewish. Anti-Semitism? Give me a break. This is silly. This is silly. And look to the Jewish organization right now in Ukraine. So I'm working in Jewish. I'm not Jew, but I'm working in Jewish organization because I adore this culture. This is so rich and fantastic, and it is part of Ukraine, as well as Crimean culture, as well as Ukrainian culture, as well as Russian culture, etc. We are multi-ethnical. Okay. And yeah, so this is endless. Just interrupt me.
No, thank you for your response. I totally appreciate your perspective. There's one last thing, and then we'll move on perhaps, or if others have got a comment. There's one thing that Putin has said recently, and because obviously a lot of your remarks are very anti-Putin, and that's fine. Putin was saying that discussing Crimea and the question of Eastern Ukraine, which we haven't discussed yet, why in international law there's a whole big argument. Did the people of Crimea and the Donbass have a right to a referendum which declared unity with Russia? Did they not? Mm-hmm. There's a huge issue. What Putin said, and this is interesting, is that there would never have been a referendum at all if it had not been for the coup in Kiev. Now, the language is very important. You see, from Russia's perspective, and I'm talking Putin's elite security state perspective, they see the events in the Maidan, however we want to describe them all. You were there, Larissa, I totally understand. But did what Putin says is that this was a coup against the legitimate president of Ukraine, who at the time was a man called Yanukovych.
Yanukovych, yes.
And that what happened was, it was like people taking to the streets to bring down the legitimate president. Now, they regard that as a coup. Okay, and of course, so we've got to somehow mediate that narrative, which seems to be dominant in Russia, which they use to then justify the separation of Crimea and Eastern Ukraine, right? With the narrative of the people in, such as yourself, who saw it, you presumably didn't see it as a coup, you saw it as a liberation struggle, right? Like, where is the truth here, is my question. Is it possible to mediate these two narratives?
First of all, first of all, we should just see accurate history, objective accurate history. People stay in Maidan and not a, I really don't understand this word. Maybe you coup, what does it mean? Junta is something like that, because it's a very popular narrative. Junta, like military people who did this political change. And so what happened? It starts with a student protest, because Yanukovych cheated us very seriously. we declare, and it was a very strong movement that we move in to European Union, we European country, we want to go to European Union. And in 2013, and at November 21 at 11 o'clock, Yanukovych said no, that we are not signing agreement with European Union. And you know, it was not just a question of agreement, it was question of values, it was question of future, it was a question of Ukrainian identity. And the first people who protest was students. They was on Maidan on 10 days, and it was a peaceful protester. In November 30, actually Yanukovych authorities did a huge mistake. They start to beat these children. They start to at night. It was they sit in the center of city at night, and a lot of police come and start to very cruelly beat these children. The next, this is a question who is Ukrainians. The next day, all the Kiev stand up, go to the center of city and say, you, the police, you beat our children. It was, you know, it was, I personally saw a very old people with, you know, who hardly move, and come to this police officer and said that you are, I'm sorry to, I don't want to use bad words, but here they use a very bad words about police who started to cruelly beat people. And it was, you know, beginning that of the whole action. We understand that our authorities very unjust, and we start to stand in the center of Maidan and demand that that our authorities should be changed, because actually our president, I mean legitimate President Yanukovych, cheated us very seriously. It was a point.
Okay, so it's a people's standing for justice rather than a coup is the narrative, and I think you know, if we can get collaboration between Russian philosophers, Ukrainian philosophers, maybe this is one of the things you can address. Is it? I mean, I'm a historian and a philosopher, and I know that history is told from different perspectives. And you know, we met at a Jain conference, which teaches that there are multiple perspectives. There's no one absolute true.
Absolutely, Anekantvada, yes.
Yeah. So can we apply the Jain approach to this problem?
Absolutely, I think there is no such a thing as an objective history. And this is just in a history of many opinions, and I just show my why I came, why I'm very peaceful, introverted, as you know, very academic oriented, very you know, usually being in my books and my ideas and not connecting with social worlds in properly. Why I stand and leave my apartment and go to the center of the Kiev, because it was question of ultimate unjust, and it was question of dignity, you know, as a pure human dignity. So treat us as a people, please.
Oh, thank you. I mean, your subjective experience is the truth, you know, and the ultimate truth is everybody's all joined up, you know, which is ultimately enlightenment. I think.
I want to add one more thing, if you have time. I don't know about.
We're fine on time, and then some other comments about Ukraine, Dr. Swaminadhan. Maybe you can tell us what the solutions are. Larissa, your last point, please.
We just want to add one thing. There is not only military, you know, tension. There is also a spiritual tension between right now between Ukraine and Russia. Maybe this point is not clear in the world picture, because we receive church autonomy. In 2018, Ukrainian Orthodox Church become independent from Russia, and right now is a very strange thing happening, because Russian Orthodox Church want to establish his peripheries and his dominance in Africa. Please pay attention on those things, because orthodoxy, I mean Christianity, orthodoxy from, I'm sorry, Russian side became a quite aggressive political instrument. So this is my point. I want that everybody pay attention, because it's not in the media. It's some friends of mine wrote an article about that. So it's an interesting thing happening right now. Yeah, this is my last point.
Can I just clarify that, Larissa, what you said there? I think I heard you say that the Russian Orthodox Church, which claims sort of sovereignty over all orthodoxy in the old days, the New Rome and so on, is now making what you're saying is that Ukrainian Orthodoxy has severed from
Ukrainian Orthodoxy right now is separated from Russian Orthodoxy. Before we were under the umbrella. So right now we have
your own autocephalous, autonomous Orthodox Church, but you're still recognizing the patriarch in Istanbul, presumably, the Patriarch Bartholomew, who's the head of the whole Orthodox Church.
Yes. So, yes, absolutely. And we received from Bartholomew this document called Tomos, which means our church autonomy from Russia. Yeah. So we are right now we are equal to Russian Orthodox Church, and it was a big event. Actually, we celebrate in Ukraine in 2018, and in December, because we received this Tomos, this is sovereignty. But look to of the politics of Russian Orthodoxy in the world right now, because they want to establish some spheres of influence in Alexandria. Patriarchy. Alexandria means this is Africa. This is yeah. It's
well, that's very interesting.
Yeah,
that adds a whole spiritual dimension to this conflict I hadn't thought of. But I would like to just share a story with you and make a suggestion. Some of you may know, I don't know if Larissa remembers, I wrote a few years back the first ever interfaith peace treaty in the world, designed for all religions, pagan, Jain, Druid, Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, whatever, to sign. Okay, and lots of people have signed. And I wrote to the Russian Orthodox authorities in St. Petersburg, requesting that they should sign this treaty. This was a couple of years ago. I had a Russian secretary helping who put the letter into perfect Russian. We sent it by email, and we got a response from the secretary of the Patriarch of Russia, who is officially tasked with interfaith relations for the Russian Orthodox Church, right? And this guy wrote back the most arrogant and, I'm sorry, ignorant letter I have ever received. He wrote back saying, I'm not signing an interfaith peace treaty because only the Russian Orthodox Church is right. We have the truth, the light, and the way. All other religions are from the devil. So why would I possibly want to sign a peace treaty with other religions like Hindus and Buddhists? They're all from the devil. Anyway, it was a very ignorant letter. I replied back to him, my dismay. The man was a junior man doing his PhD. I said to him politely, I hope when you finished your PhD, your attitude might change. But I was shocked. So what I would like to say to you, Larissa, is I will send the same letter via you to the Ukrainian Orthodox leader, and I hope for a better response, because I think, I mean, I love Orthodoxy. I'm a Christian myself. I don't see anything in the Bible that says never talk to other religions. You know, it's a very anti-Christian attitude. What do you say, Larissa?
I think, first of all, it might be a very interesting experiment of the maturity, of spiritual maturity for Christian, Ukrainian Christian Orthodoxy, because first of all, okay, I know about this politics is Christians are right and nothing else is, nothing else is more right than Christians, but it's very important to create peace. It's no matter, it's very important to connect with others and to, so I'm in. So if you send me this letter and I find right people to to go to Metropolitan Epiphany. So we will see the reaction at least.
English and Russian, and you can translate it into Ukrainian.
I will translate it into Ukrainian. Okay.
Well, there's a very exciting thing. And can I just tell everyone else on this call, please sign the Interfaith Peace Treaty. It has its own website.
Okay.
So look, we have up to 30 minutes for further discussion. Who would like to respond? Sean from Ireland. What do you think about the what you've heard about the Ukraine situation and the role of the EU? Can Ireland do anything about this situation?
Yeah, well, thanks very much. And thanks very much, Larissa, for that very comprehensive analysis. Just one thing before I answer Thomas's question, that concept that the war has already begun, that's a very important concept with every conflict, because every conflict, it's there before the fighting starts. The actual fighting, you know, the actual armies crossing borders, that comes at a later stage in every conflict. So it's quite an interesting idea that you were saying that the war psychologically, economically, politically, culturally, narratively, and that goes back quite a few years. There is a leading peace researcher, Professor Galtung, and he looked at the Central European countries and after the breakup of the Soviet Union to see how this type of conflict could be prevented. This is 30 years ago. So his proposal was some sort of neutral, guaranteed group of nations outside the European Union, outside the control of Russia, and guaranteed both by the West and by Russia. And that kind of idea just didn't happen, of course. And now we're kind of paying the consequences of it. And just in relation to Thomas's, the question of joining the European Union was a very important question for Ukraine. But Ireland is a member of the European Union, but we're a neutral country, so we're not a member of NATO. And we specifically said we will never join NATO because of our peace history. So what the powers in the European Union and in NATO have now said that you can't join the European Union without becoming a member of NATO. And that's what a problem for Russia. One of the problems with Ukraine, that they were saying you can't become a member of the European Union without becoming a member of NATO. But of course you should be able to. And that's just a very mute point, but it's one of the issues that might come back, that there could be a solution involved in. That's all. That's all I'm going to say.
No, that's a really important point. The question of, you know, the encirclement of Russia with NATO countries joining is something, again, that Putin obsesses about, and Russians generally do. I think with some justification. Myself, in 1990, when the Cold War ended with the Treaty of Paris, we signed a peace treaty in Paris. And apparently, the American president, Reagan, had given a verbal guarantee to Gorbachev that there would be no encirclement of Russia by NATO. But it was never put into the treaty. It was never put in writing. And of course, what happened was America completely disregarded their given word, and they recruited the Baltic states and Poland and everyone else to join NATO, which I think was a strategic error. I think it was a moral error. It was a breaking of one's word, and it was a strategic error. I mean, NATO shouldn't be involved in this. And I think, Sean, you raise a very important point. I don't think you should have to be in NATO to join the European Union. European Union is a peaceful coming together of nations, not a military pact. And I think that, you know, if that's true, I'd love, Sean, can you send me anything in writing about the source of that information? Is it some bill that's been passed by the European Union? If so, I haven't seen it. And I would certainly think that we should campaign to get that rescinded. It should be a very important campaign that we in the World Intellectual Forum in Europe can do, because it's, you know, it goes against the spirit of the founding of the European Union. Larissa, do you want to respond to that point about NATO and so on? I mean, did Ukraine seriously suggest joining NATO? Is that on your policy chart or not?
Actually, this is our big desire, because we want to be protected. You know, we want actually, we are pro-NATO. We are pro-NATO. We are not, actually, otherwise our guarantees of peace will be quite weak and uncertain. You know, in we how to say, we were a nuclear nation, you know, and we actually destroy our own nuclear weapon, and it was so-called Budapest Memorandum, which was guarantee that no United States, United Kingdom, Russia, and I don't remember the third country, so they guarantee that Ukraine would be never meet such reality as war. So it will be, it was a guarantee of our security. Look what's happened with this Budapest Memorandum. So nobody followed that that instruction. It was a guarantee that we just instead. So from our side, we should destroy our own nuclear power that protect us before. Yes. So
I think that, I mean, you've raised a very important point.
Yeah.
I would like to just tell people some information. I attend a conference regularly on Zoom organized by the Belfer Center in Harvard University, which is a Center for Intelligence Studies. And these are very high level people discussing how the world looks from an intelligence perspective. And I was at a Zoom conference a few days ago about Ukraine, Russia, organized by these people. And they were talking about the Budapest Memorandum. And one of the things they were saying is they're so glad that Ukraine did get rid of its nuclear weapons. Because they were saying, imagine Ukraine still had a nuclear force, and this conflict was going to go nuclear. So that was one of the points they were making. And in fact, one of the people that spoke was a Russian policy expert on Russia's nuclear forces back in the 90s, a man called Sergei something, I've got his name written down, who was in charge of discussions when Ukraine agreed to get rid of its nuclear armed forces. He was saying that for him in those days, Russia was like a failed state. It was Yeltsin who got that negotiation signed. And this chap said that Yeltsin was drunk at the time, and so there was a sort of total chaos going on in Russia with the collapse of the Soviet system. Nobody knew how to deal with the former Soviet arsenal of nuclear weapons. I think what Ukraine did was an incredibly ethical thing. The world should give them kudos for that. And it would be disastrous if the fruit of it is that they get then, reinvaded. My personal take on this is I don't think Russia wants to invade Ukraine. And you said there was talk going on in your circles about this is all a KGB disinformation campaign. They're trying to make you all afraid, right? I'd like to put to you another theory, because I've hung around these intelligence circles in the Belfer Institute. I've heard CIA types talking, I've heard ex-KGB talking. It was a very high-level academic discourse, right? I know how they think, okay? I can assure you there are people both on American intelligence and Russian intelligence who are trying to big up this conflict. These are low-level operatives that are trying to make everybody filled with fear, because that's how the military intelligence security system operates. It creates fear, creates paranoia. Everybody's afraid of everybody else. The Russians are terrified of Ukraine and the fascists and the Americans and the CIA, and vice versa. Everyone's afraid of everyone else. So then at the end of the day, there can be a lovely war and the military then cream off, get all the money, and they all get it in their back pockets, you see. What I'm saying is we the people, we are the intellectual Maidan, if you want, of free-thinking wisdom workers, okay, not intelligence workers. We have to protest that entire system. And we have to say to these intelligence operatives, stop doing this stupid cyber war stuff, which they're all doing. And I know in Britain they're doing it. The British intelligence are all working full time to create fear everywhere, you know. And this is why the World Intellectual Forum, we issued, Dr. Swaminathan and I and others, a cyber peace treaty, that nations would now declare a cyber peace of non-violence, that just as we're not allowed to send troops into each other's country, we should also not be allowed to send cyber warriors to hack into each other's minds, which is what's happening with these cyber wars. And so I want to say one piece of good news, which I've shared with the MAPS people, just to bring this into that. I shared with Rena and Karen. I was on another seminar with the Belfer Institute, like about 6 months ago, that was a very high level. We had John Kerry speaking, who is the climate change delegate from Biden. And we were told that Biden had issued an instruction to his intelligence chiefs, CIA, the whole lot, you know, all the alphabet soup of people, that they should stop their work demonizing other countries, which is what these intelligence people have been doing since the Cold War and before. You know, they've been attacking Russia or Nazi Germany or the Islamic world or Afghanistan. He said, no, stop all that. What I want you to concentrate on is fighting global climate change, climate catastrophe, the kinds of doomsday scenarios that Rena's presentation talked about. That's the real threat we're all facing. And he said, I want special people in the intelligence services to focus not on attacking other countries, but working across countries with them to invent new technologies, to develop mechanisms to solve the causes of global warming, and then what we can do about it. And one of the speakers on that incredibly inspiring seminar was an American admiral in charge of the Third Fleet. He retired and he was now active as a climate activist. And he talked about, he'd done a survey with the American Navy about climate change in the Arctic. And he said that it's warming up much more fast than any other part of the planet. That the polar vortex, which keeps the cold air up in the Arctic, is now breaking down, which is why cold air is coming down to Texas or wherever. And he was saying the Navy have conducted a survey of climate change as a security threat, you know. So I was, gosh, you know, I think that's where we should shift this whole state security apparatus. Instead of fighting wars, we should come together across nations, as Dr. Swaminathan wants us to do, and find common strategies to solve our environmental problems. Anyway, I wanted to share that. That's a sort of little, another dimension to add in, and why this idea of these wars is so retrograde. You know, it's retro, as we say in English. So anyone else, Dr. Swaminathan, do you want to comment on that? Because one of the motivations for your World Federation idea is environmental common action, isn't it? You'll have to unmute. Sorry, you'll need to unmute. I can't do it, I don't think. You know, you just need to press the microphone button that's at the bottom of your screen. It says left hand, mute. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, Larissa, do you want to comment on what I was saying about the intelligence dimension before we hear from Dr. Swaminathan?
Actually, no. I'm just thinking about this whole what you say about military, high-level military strategy. Yes, to how to make people fear and make them stay in panic. It's very interesting. We here in Ukraine and intellectuals in Ukraine, we thought that this is a special Soviet Union techniques, but right now I see that this is old military techniques. So this is very important contribution. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. And I would invite you to come to the Belfer Institute forum.
Thank you, with pleasure.
As a philosopher, we philosophers need to infiltrate the security system, find out how they think, and then we can challenge them on their own ground, you know, because it's so stupid what they're doing. They've stolen the word intelligence. Actually, it belongs to us.
Yes, I totally support. Yeah.
They're the non-intelligence people, you know, and they get paid millions of pounds to destabilize the world with fear. So I'll send you the invite to the next meeting. We had one on Afghanistan, we had one on the anniversary of 9/11, and then we had this one on ecology that was so important. Kaushala Mishra, would you like to comment? You've been listening faithfully. If you unmute, you're a scientist. What did you think of the MAPS presentation of RENA? And can you sign the declaration on behalf of your Asian radiation body? You'll need to unmute, sir.
Just a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Today I quite much enjoyed the discussion. But as a scientist, I look at the issues of conflict, why the international community is not getting actively involved, especially the United Nations Security Council. The discussion there should somehow subside the temper, both sides. The issue is the war that will take place will lead to destruction of Ukraine, and also it will promote groupism in the international circle, NATO versus Russia. So one of the view is that somewhere there should be discussion in the international organization like United Nations, and they should bring the parties together and reduce the conflict level that is going on. Rightly, she said that the panic that exists in the country is more harmful than the war, perhaps. And I see the tension escalating day by day. Imagine the mental condition of the people of Ukraine. And I really pity that this situation is existing for long. And I somehow fail to understand the international organizations that we made after World War II. They remain silent for quite some time, whether it is an issue of conflict in a country or it is an issue of human problems, like in Myanmar. The inactivity, inaction that I see surprises me. And as a scientist, I see that these conflicts can be resolved in much milder ways than going to war. But perhaps before going to war, nobody wants to speak out boldly. Nobody wants to take a stand. And that is my concern. Sometimes I feel, and I totally agree with the views of Lasya, that the issues that are there in Ukraine, they are really creating panic. And this panic situation should be reduced in human conflict system. Humans are getting terrorized. They are living in stress. There will be psychological problem, illness, disease, and so on. So our appeal should be to the international community our appeal should be to the international organization like United Nations Security Council. I do not know why there is inaction.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra. I mean, I think India could play a role here. India has power within the United Nations. You're the biggest democracy in the world. If you would offer to try and mediate, I mean, you've had good relations historically with Russia and also with Ukraine. And your Prime Minister Modi has just been off to Central Asia to try and, you know, do some peace diplomacy with the former Soviet Union countries of Central Asia. I think that if I was you, I would write to Modi and we can send him a clip of this conference. And if Dr. Swaminathan and you, as two Indian intellectuals and others, Aaron Sikawa and the others, could say, look, why can't we, as India, raise this at Security Council level? They could be doing much more in terms of peace diplomacy. And also, we need a historical commission to resolve this question of who's to blame. You know, that's what propagandists seize on. Whereas ordinary, decent people, you know, on both sides are the ones who are going to suffer. It's for the safety of their peace that we should be working here. And you raise another important point, Dr. Mishra, about medicine. I mean, you are yourself involved in radiological medicine, but you know, we are, as intellectuals, we're also doctors and healers. A true intellectual is always a healer, in my opinion. And this is a challenge. To prevent war is the biggest challenge for doctors. I worked with the Medical Association for the Prevention of War and International Physicians for the Prevention of War, who won the Pugwash Award and so on, and the Nobel Peace Prize. You know, we need to get doctors involved because, you know, if God forbid there won't be, but if this sort of whipping up of fear and hatred succeeds and there is a war between Ukraine and Russia, and I sincerely pray to all the Orthodox patriarchs in the entire universe it won't happen, then it would be a medical catastrophe. From a medical perspective, we have to work flat out to stop this.
Thomas, I would like to add that India is very keen to somehow bring about peace in Central Asia. And you might have seen that Indian initiative to bring the leaders of Central Asia together. Recently, there was a meeting. So our Prime Minister is playing a little safe at the moment, not to be seen with either group of conflictors, but at the same time playing a silently active role to bring peace. This policy of Indian government at the moment is very clear, but there is a little risk of being seen as aligning with one of the groups, and that's what India would like to avoid.
Sure. No, I understand that. I would just, before we ask Rosalba to maybe comment on the ecological dimensions of she heard the Arctic situation, I just want to say that governments, I've come round to the view of that governments have very little incentive to bring about peace. They're working with their own military, their own intelligence operatives, their own banking industry, their own finance. And they have a sort of inbuilt interest in supporting the military establishment. I've coined a new word this week. I call it catastro-capitalism. Capitalism generates catastrophes almost, you know, in order to boost its own feeding. It's like a big beast. I mean, this is an update of Marx, who's sort of long gone, but was a great thinker. We need now to recognize that capitalism is embedded with the military, especially here in the West, and I think in every country. The people that benefit from war are the military capitalists. And so what they do is what I call catastro-capitalism. And, you know, they generate one, then another in order to sell their weapons. Now, I don't think, therefore, we can really look to governments to come out of that cycle. They're not going to break that vicious circle because they benefit from it. We have to, therefore, build a cultural movement of the people of the intellectuals, of the artists, of the poets, of the dancers. That's what the Delphic Games is about. And I'm, we had our Secretary General talking earlier. We're trying to build a people-to-people movement. The people of Russia, the people of Ukraine, they don't want war. The people of, Azerbaijan and the people of Armenia didn't want war. The people of Palestine and the people of Israel don't want war. And so on. It's the security establishments, the elites, the military and intelligence, and the corporate sector who make and manufacture the drones and the cyber weapons that they're using now, and the nuclear weapons. They want war. So that's the challenge. How can we, the people, challenge that elite thinking? That's the job of the World Intellectual Forum, I think. Rosalba, we've got a few minutes. I'd love to hear from Italy. What's your perspective on all this? And how can ecology and spirituality work together to save the planet?
Thank you, Thomas. I am Rosalba Natero, president of Ecospirituality Foundation, an NGO in consultative status with the United Nations. We have our roots are very ancient because we refer to the ancient Druidic shamanism transmitted by Giancarlo Barbadoro that unfortunately disappeared in 2019. And ecospirituality, we bring its message about ecospirituality because ecospirituality is, I think, is based on the relationship with the nature, seen as our only true mother, the only true teacher. Nature, Mother Earth, makes us grow and stimulates us to evolve with her continuous teaching. This philosophy was defined by me and Giancarlo together with various tribal leaders of native nations with whom we have a relation within the United Nations, with whom we operate through the Ecospirituality Foundation. And the contribution that I would like to bring to this peace-oriented forum is to tell you about the new ecospiritual renaissance. If I have a few minutes,
Sure, no, do. I think it's important.
Thank you. New ecospiritual renaissance is a cultural movement and expression of opinion. It is non-political, no party or confessional affiliations, and was founded by the Ecospirituality Foundation. The movement is inspired by the philosophy of ecospirituality proposed by Giancarlo Barbadoro. The concept of ecospirituality arises from the experience of natural people, meaning those native populations that have resisted assimilation into the religions and the ideologies of majority society. We have also a manifesto. We have written a manifesto about this new ecospiritual renaissance. I just read a few points. Man does not hold absolute dominion over creation. The time has come for anthropocentrism, whereby everything the universe is created for needs of humans, to be replaced by an anti-speciest biocentric approach. Knowledge has to be free, with no preconception or contamination from partial ideologies. We want to color the world with a culture that has no ideological boundaries, exchange new ideas with each other, look up to the stars and investigate to the universe and beyond. We intend to promote free, impartial research in order to develop a culture of new knowledge, uniting science with spirituality, with not giving preference to any one field over others. We support the exchange of experience between anyone who accepts dialogue with ways of thinking different from their own, while completely respecting of ideas and do not undermine anyone else's freedom. We propose the study of and safeguarding of ancient traditions to understand and preserve our link with the cultural roots of humanity, which can give a sense of continuity and universal value to each individual. We consider spirituality to be a form of free personal research, and that is should be defended and protected as such. Our planet has to be protected and respected. Nature gives us our life, feeds us, provided us with everything we need to live. Just a few points about the manifesto. If anyone is interested to join, we have a website, ecospiritualrenaissance.eu. Thank you, Thomas.
No, thank you, Rosalba. That's very important. And,
yes,
you know, it's a good note to close on, because by waving the flag for indigenous spirituality, as you rightly say, they've resisted. They're often at the hard end of the impact of catastrophe capitalism. You know, the Aborigines or the American Indians where uranium is mined, or the Siberian shamans where Russia did its own nuclear research and explosions and so on, and Britain with the Aboriginals of Australia. So, and that was, I think, a very moving part of Rena's presentation to me, was the role of the elders in the Arctic, the indigenous people.
Yes.
They come across, and I've said this before too, MAPS, we need to get a pan-polar indigenous people's council. I can help with Britain and Scandinavia and Norway and so on. I'm in touch with indigenous spiritual elders in Europe and the Finnish Lapps and so on. Others will have to work with the Soviet, but I do have links to former Soviet Siberian shamans and so on, through Slovenia, in fact. And then in North America as well. If we can get the indigenous people to speak out absolutely clearly in support of MAPS, to get their governments to sign it, you know, we have a lot of support there in the Canadian Indians. And I was saying, I think, seriously, Larissa, we need to put pressure on the Ukrainian government to sign the MAPS treaty, because your presentation woke us all up to its importance, I think. So thank you for reminding us about the indigenous people. Rena, any comments?
Yes, I just wanted really to thank all of you for the attention. And I wanted to emphasize again our philosophy, that we know that we are all interconnected. So we are coexist creatures. Within us, there are millions of fungi and bacteria. We are not isolated creatures. And the misconcept of isolation is the root problem in our world. Not only the misunderstanding of the policymakers, but really the mass population do not act with the idea that we are here together, and whatever we do affect everyone else, whatever we think affect everyone else. So the message of MAPS to the world is first, act as you are part of the whole. And I think as intellectual people with a certain level of awareness, we have to act to uplift the awareness in the world. This is my main mission as I preserve it, and I hope you do too, just to educate. And I think only this type of behavior can bring about peace to the world and peace with nature. I really feel so comfortable with you here, and I really, really hope to meet you, each of you in person, and to further discuss how we can advance maps. We need the support of everyone, and you all. You are so connected with so many people. Please help. Please, please help us. Please, not me personally, but please help the Arctic Ocean and nature. Thank you so much.
I think we're all there with you. And I think one word for this feeling of interconnectedness is love, which is a word in English, quite a useful word. And in the Christian scriptures, there's a saying, God is love. That's philosophers have mused about what that means.
Also in the Jewish tradition, okay?
Absolutely.
God is love, okay? Yeah.
Okay,
of course,
absolutely.
Christian and Jewish are coming from the same.
Well, I think it's in all the.
To emphasize.
I mean, Krishna emphasizes this continuously. Vishnu, So let's end on that note. Let's each go off and find connection with that divine love, which we all are part of, which is in nature. You don't have to pay for this. You don't have to, it's something that is yours by birthright, that interconnectedness. So I'd just like to say thank you again to everyone who spoke. I'm sorry there wasn't time for everyone to say as much as we would have loved. Perhaps, Aaron, you can speak at the next meeting about your work in neuropsychology.
Namaste to everyone. I'm working on one article actually in India, especially in 5-6 states. There's an election going on, and probably for next 1 month there's a democratic political, this voting and electoral practice. So through one TV channel, I was asked to work on the psychology and the mind game, and especially the neurobiology of decision making in political voting electoral system. So because nowadays mass media is so much, interwoven to our life, and money is so much, at least to some big political people. So how these money and mass media affect the person's inherent voting option. So what happens as the day progresses to the voting day, and people gets deviated with the mind, and their psychology changes, and they give vote as per the choice of that person who is spending that money. So I was asked to create a map, this psychological aspect, how people are playing the mind game. And we have already seen this in US election also, how at the last moment mass media and TV channels were working just like one of the major strategical paradigm to affect the electoral result. So the same way we are seeing in India also. So I'm working on that theme. So let me collect some information and I will share with the WIF.
That's
it's very interesting.
We saw this with the Brexit referendum in Britain, that information has become, as they call it, weaponized. Brexit was, imposed on the British people by the mass media's tech giants through Cambridge Analytica and so on. We've entered a phase of what you could call post-democracy, where the catastrophe capitalists can now game the system and create any election result they want. So, anyway, we are still free to think and to love. So
I've learned this technique of to be called as a thinker, independent thinker, and becoming an intellectualist. So that's why I was wondering to think, many people don't speak how our, inherent options of mind is getting deviated by this mass media slowly. It's like a poisoning our mind. So no,
we have to, our greatest resistance is to think. That's our duty as intellectuals. And to think freely any given system or ideology or political system or whatever. So look, thank you again for coming. It's been a wonderful meeting. And I look forward to seeing you again next month. And we'll be in touch. Ramesh has rejoined us. I hope you could hear most of that, Ramesh.
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. I mentioned the Delphic Games, you know, several times in relation to the use of culture to transform people's consciousness. That's so important. We can't look to politics. It's been, you know, captured by the techno-catastrophe capitalists. So we have to look to culture, and that's why I keep writing poetry. That's my act of resistance. Okay, so thank you again for everyone, and we'll see you next month. And you know, go with the truth, and as you see it from your unique perspective. Remember the Jain wisdom of Anekantvada. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to you, Thomas.
I know it's my
Thank you.
duty as
Thank you
Thank
to
you.
all of
Thank
you.
you so much.
humble
Thank
servant
you.
of the goddess of wisdom, Sarasvati. She's my line manager.
Thank you
Yes,
very much.
that is good.